Welcome to week 6 of EDU 515. We are definitely on the downward slope of our course for this summer, so hang in there with me. That being said, I want to talk a little bit about last week's papers and submissions. This is one of the few times that I have had a small number of students earning an A on an assignment. Half of you had A's. Good for you. They were great papers, followed the rubric, read all of the criteria, met that criteria, did your APA correctly, your citations were correct. That was fabulous. Many of the other half of you had B's or C's, largely because there was no in-text citations, personal communications was not listed as a citation. There were some of you that left out parts of the paper. So I'm a little concerned at this point that there are some of you who may or may not be listening to this video who are not watching the videos regularly or reading my emails that come as announcements. It is really important that you follow all of these. And while these Sunday afternoon videos can sometimes be a little tedious, there's information that's covered in them that I expect to see in your work. So it really slowed me down grading the papers this week because there were a lot of APA errors. And the next two pieces that are submitted, I'm not going to comment on those errors anymore. I'm simply going to take off the points. It just takes too much time to stop and make all of those comments, and I find myself focusing more on your APA style than your content, and that's not the way that it should be. So just heed that for these next two assignments, and please make sure that you are using all of your resources that are out there. I went on Blackboard today and purposely looked under the writing. It used to be called the Writing Center. I think it's called the Writing something else now. But in there is a link to Grammarly. Grammarly is free to all of you to submit your papers to get feedback on grammar and spelling. If you're not going to use Grammarly, please, please, please at least put your papers into spell check and grammar check, because a lot of you are making unnecessary spelling and grammatical errors as well. This is not something that's acceptable at the master's level. And so I really need you to take care in these papers before you turn them in. They must be proofread, and they must be put through some kind of a check to make sure that you are reaching that level of writing that is expected in the master's program. With that being said, I do want to commend everyone in this class for getting their assignments in on time. That is a first. Of all the online courses I have taught, and there's been quite a few, this is probably the first class where everyone, every week, has submitted all their assignments on time. So I really appreciate that, because it takes a big burden off of me of trying to get a hold of you and fill in back assignments when we're not supposed to really be taking those. So I do appreciate that. Again, for this paper, I put my comments in those little blue boxes. If you made more than one submission, check both of them for your comments, because sometimes I put it on submission 1, sometimes on submission 2. So pull up the rubric and look for those comments. And I'm hoping that they're helpful. But to be honest with you, it's been kind of a crazy week for me. We our house is in escrow, and we found another house that we had to put an offer in on super fast. And long story short, that is a big part of the reason why I did not get your papers graded in a very speedy fashion, which I don't like to do. They're all in now, but forgive me for being a little slow this week. It's been kind of crazy. I'm sure most of you are ending up your school year or have already ended your school year, so I hope that life slows down for all of you a little bit. All right, on to this week. You have one long article, as it was pointed out to me, 33 pages. However, the last 10 pages of this article are all diagrams, so that cuts it down a little bit. This is a paper written by Anderson, who focuses in on Robert Greenleaf's work. about servant leadership. And I really love that expression, servant leadership. I think not just as a Christian and a Christian university, but all of us need to be thinking about what does our work look like as we serve others around us. So this one is going to focus on moving from the prevailing culture to a God-centered servant leader culture. The other two things you have there, two videos, they're both pretty short. Simon Sinek is another 5-minute interview from CBS about putting others first. And I don't know about you guys, but I really like Simon Sinek. He seems to be very down to earth and very realistic about what he's seeing in the world today. And then the last video is 3 minutes and 45 seconds. It's Desmond Tutu, and he is the South African theologian. You probably all know that, who was a I can't think of it right now. Nobel Prize winner. Sorry. And he's speaking on leadership as well. So I'm sure that you will get some really good information from these articles. On discussion board, you have one discussion board entry this week. It's kind of a meaty one. I really like this prompt. It says for you to consider the concept of servant leadership and compare and contrast it to the 5 leadership practices that are put forth in the Leadership Challenge. So look at those topics, those headings that were in your textbook, and the big ideas that came out of those, and compare and contrast those ideas. Each member of the discussion board will post a different provocative quote from Anderson's interpretive analysis of servant leadership. To be honest with you, I'm not going to go through and make sure that nobody has the same quote, but if you see a quote already posted, don't use that one. You're also going to analyze how the quote relates to those 5 practices. So again, if you remember from the Leadership Challenge, those 5 practices: model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. So lastly, on this discussion board, you're going to comment on whether or not the quote that you chose to share with fits your own leadership philosophy and why. So it says in there 2 paragraphs maximum. So it's meaty but not too long. I'm almost thinking you may want to do this discussion board entry after you've written your paper, because you're going to be processing that idea of your leadership philosophy in the paper. So then that takes us into the leadership paper. I'm happy to see that no one has uploaded it yet. So hopefully you're watching this video prior to doing that. I know many of you are working on it. So I want to just bring a couple of things to your attention for this paper. This paper really is a culminating tie together of all the ideas and things that you've been reflecting on, reading about, watching in the videos over the course of this session. So this is a 4+ page paper, not too long, not too old, or not too long, not too short. It is personal in nature, so you can write in first person. There are 6 sections of the paper that, there are 8 sections of the paper that you are graded on, but there are 6 sections that you are going to respond to. Now, I do need to commend you all for the use of headings. Most all of you used headings in the last paper, and it just is so easy to read through your papers and to know that you've touched on each of those places. Sometimes when I'm reading a paper that has no headings, I keep having to go back to the rubric, back to your paper. Did they discuss this? Did they include this here? And especially if they're out of order, sometimes it just gets really hard to find where have you addressed that, and how am I going to score this? So in the directions for this paper, the writer of this course has actually laid out all of your headings for you, and I would definitely make use of that. The first section of your paper should start with an introduction. Most of you did that on the last paper, although a few of you jumped right in and just started talking about your topic with no intro. So you want to make sure that you do put in an intro, but you don't use the words introduction as one of your headings. Don't ask me why, but you don't. I guess it's not in the book, in the APA manual. But your other headings are going to include outside influences, shaping my philosophy of leadership. So it asks you to reflect upon a positive or negative experience with a leader. Well, we did that in week 1. So I would go back, look at your discussion board entries, look at some of the things that you already wrote. I think you actually had 2 prompts that discuss that. So look back at your own discussion board prompts and pull from that to address that section. The second section is developing a personal vision. And this is personal experiences and challenges that you've had as you've developed your own leadership vision. So it could be explained by reflecting on a personal leadership situation you've encountered in your field. Again, many of you have already commented on this in either a paper or a discussion board. So rather than trying to recreate everything from scratch, pull from what you already have. Hopefully, those ideas are already in your journal entries. Your third section is entitled Course Connections. These are all level 1 headings. There is no need for anything more than a level 1 heading in this paper, in my opinion. In this one, you're going to actually be using your reading reflection journal, and you're going to discuss the connections that you made between your own philosophy and ideas and those that you have read about or heard about. The fourth section is called Statement of Leadership Philosophy. This section is worth 10 points to you, and this is where in 2 to 4 paragraphs you're going to write out your statement about how you've grown through your personal and professional experiences in your graduate studies. So I want you to be thinking about yourself as a leader. In your last paper, a lot of you commented in the section about your personal vision for leadership. You commented about other people. Most of you did. You commented about the people you'd interviewed. You commented about people around you. But I really want you to think about, how do I see myself as a leader? And what are the things that I think are really important? In my own workspace, we did a process this year where we looked at our vision and our values. And so maybe if you make a list of what are my vision as a leader and what are my values, that will help you. Then you have applications. That's your last section. How are you going to use what you've learned? And then your sixth heading is going to be conclusion. You're going to wrap this up with a conclusion. The conclusion is not in the 8 sections. It's in the list where she writes out your headings for you. So make sure you use that. Your reference page, again, is going to be on the separate page. This time you need 5 citations. Those 5 citations on your reference page must be cited in the body of your paper. And then lastly, as an appendix, you're going to put in your reflection journal. That's worth 10 points. If you're not sure how to attach an appendix, it's part of the format that's under APA. If you're using that format, it is the last part of the paper, and you can simply put yours in using that format. So I hope you all have been in touch with your group members for your group project. I'll go over that in more detail next week. Everybody has submitted their topics for me. Thank you very much. So you all know what you're working on. I hope that you've been able to get a hold of everyone in your group. So have a great week. I love hearing from you during the week, and I hope that you're getting your questions answered in a timely fashion. So have a great week. Remember to think about the things I've talked about to increase those points on this next week's paper.